Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to vermontitude.com, reformer.com, brattleboro.tv, and locally on Comcast Channel 78. We come to you from our studios at the Innovation Box on Landmark Hill. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Joining us today and hoping to earn a seat on Brattleboro Select Board, Isaac Evans-Frantz. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. All right, let's drill right into it. So, basic question, what inspired you to run for the Brattleboro Select Board, and what specific skills and experiences make you uniquely qualified to serve in this role, should the people choose you?
Well, Fish, I was born and raised in Brattleboro, and I love this town. I love the natural beauty. I love the community. After years away, I decided that with my spouse, we'd come back here, and this is where we decided to settle. And after the election in November, I was really concerned about our country, including our community here in Brattleboro. And I thought, okay, what can I do concretely to make a difference? And that's when I decided to run for the Brattleboro Select Board.
Okay.
I am concerned about safety in our town, like many of our neighbors. Concerned about affordability, and I'm concerned about our neighbors who are unhoused and who are really struggling. So I'm looking to bring a new perspective, a fresh perspective. I'm a coalition builder professionally. I build national coalitions for ending U.S. participation in undeclared wars, for global crisis relief, and been effective in bringing together progressives, libertarians, Democrats, Republicans for policies that we've been able to get through Congress. And I figure if I can do that at the national level, I'd like to do my best to make that happen at the local level as well.
All right, great. So let's get into it then. So you say, like, one of the first things, as I said to you before we went on, you've got a lot of words associated with you because you've got a website, and it's all right there.
Isaac4Vermont.com.
And you can go and check all that out. So public safety. All right. So we know that you stood up against an ordinance that this select board had put forward about community conduct, which really kind of led into how people use our safe. So what was your biggest issue with that?
So first of all, there is a safety concern, and I'm concerned about the fact that there's been a 16% increase in calls to the Brattleboro Police Department from 2023 to 2024, specifically concerned about the 16% increase in calls reporting violence, burglaries, assaults, and other major offenses. Mm-hmm. My concern about that ordinance, it was trying to address a whole bunch of problems with, it's a big ordinance, and there were some things that I actually think could have inhibited safety and actually while they might have reduced people's comfort calling the police, it could have meant that there was less accountability for perpetrators. And so I would like to see us break that down and to revisit it, put some more time into finding an ordinance that would work for a broader swath of the town, and that there's more support.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I guess with that, I know that somewhere you refer to it as a nuisance ordinance, right? Am I getting that language right?
So part of the ordinance was that would penalize property owners, so landlords where there were more than 3 calls to the police in a 3-month period. Mm-hmm. So the high response properties. Right. And what we've seen is in many states have made this sort of what they call nuisance laws illegal in the states because for one thing, there are concerns about First Amendment rights, that everybody has the right to call the police, and there shouldn't be a penalty for calling in. And if you're experiencing an assault, you should be able to call the police without worrying about your landlord getting fined for your call. And there have been lawsuits against municipalities all over the place. And so states have actually made this illegal to pass these sorts of municipal ordinances, or what they call in many states nuisance laws. Right.
All right. So that's where that came from. Okay. So I guess in the ordinance of itself, and we'll move on from that after this. In the ordinance itself, so as it was framed, was to help solve some of these issues, and you didn't see that. So in other words, if you have a high response property, and we've talked to some of the people who have these high response properties, and they were able to see that, yeah, indeed, like the town is looking to work with us to help resolve these problems, create mechanisms which will lessen it. And we know that some of these are above even the select board purview. Some of them go up to a state level on how, when you have a bad tenant, how to move them out so that everybody can utilize their right to quiet enjoyment. So what was it specifically about that piece of it that bothered you the most?
Well, my concern was the penalty for landlords for calls for more than 3 calls in 3 months, because what we've seen in other states is that, and similar, and we would expect the same to be in Vermont, that what would happen is that would be passed along to the tenant, that concern about calls to the police. So if someone's being sexually assaulted, for instance, or they've been robbed, or some other major offense, they're going to be reluctant to call the police. And this is what the testimony is from other states where they've passed these sort of ordinances, and they wouldn't feel comfortable calling the police because that would incur a fine for the landlord and would oftentimes result in evictions. So that the landlord basically say, if you're calling the police, that's going to result in fines for me. So don't call the police. And if you do, you're going to get evicted. And that's happened to people, as they were evicted because they called the police for help. So I do see that there is a problem. We have a situation where there are folks who are coming into our community from out of state and setting up these major opioid dealing operations, dealing fentanyl out of residential buildings.
Yep.
And it is a real problem. And it's putting tenants at risk. It's putting neighborhoods at risk. It's bringing violence into our community. And so there is a problem to solve. And I'm looking forward to working with folks, with property managers, landlords, as well as tenants and neighborhood groups to see how can we address this. And there have been neighborhood groups that have come together and worked on these issues and worked with the town and worked with property owners to address this issue of dealing that's happening, these big time dealing operations that are happening, that are taking advantage of tenants who are vulnerable, who, they have someone who comes to them and says, hey, I'll pay half your rent if you give me a room I'll just use for an hour or two every day. And then that person comes in and then they never leave, and pretty soon they're dealing fentanyl out of that apartment. So that's a real issue that we need to tackle. And there are ways that we can support and encourage our property owners to address that. And my sense is there might be 3 or 4 property owners that aren't really cooperating with the town. And that's an issue that we do need to address. And I'm interested in hearing from the town attorney and from others about what are some of the specific needs? Is it that those landlords are afraid of the tenants? Is it that we actually need to provide some incentives for them to deal with this? Like, what exactly are the issues? And then for the property owners that are willing to cooperate with the town, what are the tools and support that they need, and what are the tenants in those buildings need in order to address the safety concerns that we're seeing in some of these residential buildings.
All right, and so is it your sense like that those questions and those things hadn't been raised before?
My concern was that there had not been a thorough vetting of that policy in terms of looking at what was the impact in multiple states and of ordinances that were similar.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. And, taxes have been a big part of the conversation. Yeah. So, you came to the last select board meeting and said, don't pass this thing. And so why?
Yeah. So my concern was that the finance committee came out with a set of recommendations. That's the finance committee for representative town meeting. And their job is to advise representative town meeting on whether to approve the budget or not. And they recommended and requested that the select board do a couple of things. One is to look at, in thinking about how to save taxpayers money and how to be fiscally responsible, they suggested looking at proposing some positions, that town personnel positions that could be cut. And I understand that this is painful and hard, but there are positions that are new positions that have been created, unfilled positions that could be considered, that wouldn't actually cost anybody their job or their livelihood. But the select board decided not to do that. The finance committee also was suggesting that there be a a list of how this budget would affect next year's budget, the following year's budget, because of its impact on if we're putting off certain repairs, if we're deferring certain payments, and if we're not willing to look at personnel, because how is that going to affect us down the road? What is going to be the impact? And so that was a recommendation too. And so the select board decided not to take that guidance or to honor those requests. And my feeling was that that's really important feedback that we're getting. And while the finance committee's job is it's not the select board doesn't owe the finance committee, doesn't have to follow their guidance, but that seemed like that would have been a prudent thing to do, is to take what the statement that unanimously passed the finance committee and, at least spend the time to explore those concerns.
Right. I keep saying if you want a lower tax base, you have to you have to increase your grand list. Brattleboro's been stuck at 12,000 citizens since the 50s. Do you think the better use of staff time would be to explore how to do that, how to invite business in? Business goes where business is invited. Are we doing enough to invite business in? I don't know that we can throw up 1,000 houses, and because if we could, we wouldn't have the problem that we have now. It's not that easy. But things, and none of this, it's a slow turn. It's a slow turn. None of this, let's say you get, you win a 3-year term and then another 3-year term and another 3-year term. Maybe by the end of that third 3-year term, some of this stuff is starting to hit the road, right? I think people need to understand that democracy moves really slowly, and that's unfortunate. But do you feel as though like building a grand list is a way to kind of lower these taxes, or at least level out the tax base?
Certainly appreciate innovation and entrepreneurship. Growing up, I used to have a stand at the farmer's market every week. I would show up there and I would sell things that I had made and grown, and my family had grown, and our neighbors' products. And I really love that entrepreneurial spirit. And Brattleboro has a lot going for it in terms of the arts community, in terms of tourism, in terms of the educational opportunities around here and institutions. So there's a lot that we have to offer, and I'd love to see that expanded on, and excited for folks who take the initiative and have the innovative ideas. It's been great to see some of the members of the refugee community here in Brattleboro starting restaurants and different businesses. So excited to see that happen. I do see that housing is a major challenge. And, we need to have people. I remember the police chief came she spoke at an event a couple of years ago where she was being honored. And she said, y'all need to get together the housing situation, because it's hard to find housing when I came to this town. So, we need to have a place to put people who are excited to participate in our economy.
But do you view that as the only way to grow the grand list, is housing?
No, I think there are many ways to get that, and we need everybody and all the different energy that people bring to our town, to our community.
All right. So again, as I said, in all fairness, Isaac comes in here with a bunch of words attached to him that are easy to find. So it's what helped me build some of these questions. It says, you want to build confidence in Brattleboro town government. Do you feel that there's no confidence in Brattleboro town government?
Well, I've seen that there have, with the recent budget vote, for instance, we have a finance committee that has put recommendations forward with unanimous agreement. Yep. And then ignoring that or disregarding. So I think that one of the ways we can build confidence is by listening to folks who we might disagree with, or really taking in that input from across the political spectrum. And that's one of the things I bring to the table, is I actually really enjoy talking to people who disagree with me and like hearing them out and hearing what they have to say. I really am a believer in this idea of like, our town meeting is amazing that we get to hear all these different perspectives. And I want to make sure that we're really respecting that process. And I'm so excited that so many people are running for representative town meeting this year. And I look forward to that discussion, to hearing the different perspectives, and then seeing how we move forward together. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Let's move on to, closing statements. Like, why am I going to check your box versus somebody else that might be coming in? Are you running for a 1 year or 3 year? I'm running for a 1 year seat. There are 2 1 year seats available. All right. And when you vote for me, you're voting for somebody who has done national leadership, who's brought people together for solutions that make life better. I've done stuff that has resulted in economic benefits for the United States, building a coalition of people like the AFL-CIO and the International Chamber of Commerce signing on to a letter that for economic improvements, a letter that I circulated. Like, that's the kind of work that I do, bring people on the left and the right together for solutions that benefit everyday people. So that's one thing you'll be voting for. I helped oversee a budget of $886 million for the state of Vermont for a department when Governor Howard Dean appointed me to serve on a state board. So that's something that I have that experience with fiscal management, financial management. I have a master's in public administration. I like to look at the numbers. I like to have conversations with folks. And there's going to be an open door in terms of listening. I like to listen. I want to meet with people who see things really differently. And so that's something that you will get is a coalition builder in voting for Isaac on the Select Board ballot.
All right. Thanks for jumping on Vermontitude today.
Thanks so much, Fish. Appreciate it.